the cream de la cream. So it's exciting for someone like me who has been working in this area to see that finally we can even congregate in this manner, because many schools were resistant to RCM. They were threatening the peace of the schools, and there was paranoia around the leaderships and management of the school. I'm comfortable about having you become leaders and having you in school governing bodies as the legislation required. This legislation was passed in 1996, and many of you were not born at the time. How many of you were born in 1996 in here? You are not a student. I cannot even count you. So you can see the journey from 1996 to 2013, right? 2023, now, where we are. So it's a long journey. It has been a long journey of getting this organized as it is in such a big forum which is recognized nationally. So I'm very pleased to be in this occasion of this inaugural national conference. And my time is not that much. I have only 6 slides, and so I'll be running quickly so that I don't stand between you and your lunch. Let me first clarify concepts as they are used interchangeably and as we read and understand them. Participation, sometimes people when they speak of participation, we are talking about the equalization of power between adults and youth. When we speak of learner participation, power is becoming equal. And your experiences where you are operating might not explain participation in terms of equalization of power. You are always reminded in a forum of school governing bodies that you are young, right? Somebody's telling you, no, you are young, listen to us, we are older. So when we talk of learner participation, we are talking about equalization of power relations at institutional level. Because you are a legitimate, you have statutory rights to be in that forum and let your voice be heard. Sometimes others speak of transformation of adult institutions. Institutions which were not regarding young people as people who can be heard, but as people who can be seen only and not have a voice. And access to decision making or sharing of decision making. If we agree together in the forum that we belong to with adults and we decide that we are building a library, it must also take into cognizance what we are saying is what we need. So everybody's voice matters because you have statutory rights as you sit there. Promotion of youth citizenship, because as a citizen, having a voice, having agency is important. That's also what is needed. Sometimes people give a typology of this participation as individual, as collective. As RCLs, we are in a collective participation because we belong to a forum. It's not just me. You are a whole group of RCLs. Do you understand? So participation can be individualistic, can be also collective. And usually when people talk about individual participation, usually it happens in healthcare, medical care, where people want to, your view, we are going to operate you, are you saying yes or no? So as a young person, the individual participation also comes into play. And then we go to clarify leadership, as I'm going to use it within the context of this presentation. Thought leadership is what I want to emphasize on. Leadership is defined. If you go to the Google and want to understand what leadership is, you can come up with more than 150 definitions of leadership. So types of leaderships are there. The ones that I'm going to emphasize today is called thought leadership. Very, very important, thought leadership. And a thought leader is someone who possesses the right kind of knowledge needed to challenge existing paradigms. You must have the knowledge. Because we don't want to take advantage, because we come into leadership and we think we know. Where does knowledge come from? Knowledge comes from reading. You cannot be sitting here and 2 weeks go by, you have not actually read anything substantial, not something that has been prescribed by your school. Something to build your thinking. Something to build you as a person. Whether it's a self-help book that you want, whether you want to read politics, whether you want to read current affairs, but you need to make time in your life to read, because this is where knowledge is coming from. Most of the time we have data, we have everything. There are many books on free on the Z library. Check the Z library if you cannot afford to buy books. You have data, read. Because as a thought leader, a thinking leader is a leader that reads and will understand where we are going as a country. That's very, very important. And why the thought leadership? Because African leadership, it's a very unique role because of the positionality of the leader, his constituency or his followers, and the environment where we find ourselves as Africa. The minister has already set the tone for global players that will come out of this country, out of our schools, and out of this forum, global players. We are not preparing you to be playing at Klerksdorp High School or at Parktown High School. My daughter was at Parktown. I saw a jacket of Parktown passing here. So I'm just saying, giving an example. So that's not where you will end. We have greater vision to see you playing in global platforms with your leadership. But how then will you play there if you are not investing in yourself, if you are not investing in knowledge? You're going to go and meet people from Germany, from the Philippines, from Australia, from Brazil, and then you embarrass us because you don't know a lot. So, hence I'm saying thinking, leadership is very critical, and knowledge is very, very critical. That's why we are looking for thought leaders out of you. Not just leaders, but leaders who are thinking. You can see where the country is going, and where the continent is going because of the crisis of leadership. So we are looking up to you to raise the bar when it comes to leadership and thinking. I think that's also what I want, the point that I wanted to make. And taking into cognizance the position of Africa in the world. If I can start talking about the position of Africa in the world, we might not even have lunch. Because Africa is peripheral in the world, it's in the margin. You know what I mean? It's in the margin. And because the power structures are not symmetrical, they are not equal. You have big countries, your G8 of these countries, and looking down up to Africa. Is that something that makes you happy when you look at it, coming from Africa? Why can't African play with their peers as a country, as a continent, and also South Africa as a country, and be able to stand against these world powers? We need to correct that. We have a big responsibility to correct that. That when you walk down the street of Washington and you are representing this country, you are not going to cow down to what Italy says. You are not going to cow down to what the United States is saying. You are not going to cow down from what China is saying. You must be able to have a position, a voice, and agency with these world powers. And it doesn't take magic. It does not need any black magic. We have to start now. We have to start now and play in the global war. Why participation? Why learner participation? One writer says, if you do things without understanding the underlying philosophy, why you do the things you do, that's why you give up at the end. You say, Nagia resigner from RCL. I'm resigning. Right? Because you don't understand. Understanding why certain things are done and why you do certain things is very important. The precursor to this learner participation comes with the International Youth Year in 1985. World leaders came together, young people like you and I, and this was the beginning of the ideal for youth participation. And then in 1989, again, we had Article 12 of the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child. And this was a forum of all countries. And in this forum, they talked about increasing the participation of young people in settings that they find themselves on a daily basis. And school is one of those settings. Right? The World Programme of Action also came with 10 priority areas in 1995, and the 10 priority areas were emphasizing youth participation. So there's a long history, and these 3 forums that I'm talking about, they are global forums. So don't think that this is a South African thing, or this thing is done in South Africa only. It's done all over the world. The importance of young people participating in settings that affect them came from global structures. So in 1996, South Africa also legislated this in schools through South African Schools Act number 84 of 1996. That's when we also took all of this seriously into legislation. And remember, in the context of South Africa, we have the youth of 1976, the Soweto uprising, and you will know that all of these, even though they were not formal organizations, informally, young people have been agitating to have a voice. And they did this as early as 1976, young people at high school. They stood up against the imposition of Afrikaans in their schools. So learner participation is an old age phenomenon that has been happening in this country. And then what are the benefits? Why should we be doing what we're doing? And what do you get, you as a young person, for doing all of this? Research will show you that there are many benefits for participating in these RCLs. You get a sense of personal control because you sit with people in a forum, well-guided forum, statutory forum, and you learn to control yourself because some of you and some of our leaders think that they can do as they wish just because they are in leadership, right? Speak how they want to speak with teachers, speak on how they want to speak with principals, and they are proud to say, when I stand up, the principal knows that I'm going to tell him where to get off, right? And I think that is not the spirit. The spirit is that everyone who comes to the forum, whether you are TLO, whether you are a principal, whether you are a parent, whether you are an RCL member, you have to have what we call personal control. Don't want other people to control you and be able to, you must be able to control yourself within those structures as an adult and legitimate person, because you are not there for yourself and your ego, you are there for the interest of every young person in the school that you represent. It's not about you. The fact that they chose you is not about you. it's about everybody else that actually put you in that space. They are looking up to you, not to fail them, not to embarrass them. So these are some of the things. And research also shows that the confidence, your confidence increases because you have opportunity to stand in front of the whole mass of classes and speak. Your confidence will increase, and also your relationship with your peers and your teachers also improves, and also the functioning of the school improves because of learner participation. There are things that we as teachers didn't know that they were a problem, or that they need to change, or that they can be done differently, until learner participation was there and the learners were the ones who were showing us that, ma'am, I think on this one, let's do this and that. And then your eyes open, and that's when you begin to see that we need to change certain things here. We are not doing things. There are students who are hungry here, there are students who are having problems here, and we need to intervene. We wouldn't know, because the students are comfortable with you than they are with us as teachers. So you being in the forums, you are informing the adult forums as well. And then they also promote democratic values, and then they broaden your insight as well. You sit there with very experienced adults. Some of them are already highly educated principals, teachers, and you get information that an ordinary learner cannot get because of the things that are discussed within those forums. So you get, you broaden your insight being there. Like we are here, you listen to the minister, you listen to Dr. Koza, you listen. Not all the students at your school are able to get this opportunity to listen to what we are saying. But that's why your insight broadens as well. So take this seriously. And it also promotes a greater understanding of school values and is associated with educational expectations, positive self-concept. You feel good to be a leader, right? Am I lying? There is a self-concept. You feel good to be a leader, and greater academic commitment. Now that you are leaders, you know that there is expectation that you are going to pass, because you don't want to see yourself repeating a class when you are a leader. So it means whether you must read more than others are reading, right? And you must pass, because it's not a nice thing to be a leader and then next year you are repeating a class. How is it? Yes. So greater academic commitment also research shows that. But there are pitfalls of participation. And I'm going to touch on the RCL's ones, starting with the legislation. Tensions between protection and participation in our legislative laws, but sometimes our need amendment because in practice certain things happen, and therefore we cannot account for certain things. So, for instance, I look at the terms of office for being in the school governing body. How many years can you be? 1 year. According to the Act, it's 1 year, right? The year says 1 year. That terms of office, Dr. Tabani, and I think you are also noting this, is problematic. Because in many cases, how many meetings do you have a year? 4 to 5. And then before you can even know what and how to do, you must exit at the end of the year. It's a tension in the legislation, and I'm noting this as a recommendation to look at the terms of participation in the governing bodies. Many young people come there inexperienced and they leave inexperienced. Then here is a problem. That's number one. Let's look at that. We need to look at that tension. Number two, there is also misinterpretation of Section 32 of the Act, which says learner governance may not contract on behalf of the school nor vote on resolution of a governing body that can impose liabilities on third parties or on the school. I think there is a need to protect you from being sued on the liabilities on it. But Many schools have used this to exclude you in certain discussions. Many schools will exclude learners, say, we are talking finance, they must go out. So that's one thing that in the amendment we need to look at. Because if you're going to put people in forum and then you end up saying they are not part of, that meeting now that has constituted is illegal, is illegitimate. If members of a forum are going to be excluded from certain discussions, unless it is a discussion that involves the member. But if you are going to say we are discussing finance, we are discussing this, you go out, that forum now becomes illegitimate. So those are some of the things that we need to agitate for change of legislation on that. Of course, learners should be protected from liabilities that can come from, because they cannot vote on these things. But what does that mean in terms of participation for the learners that are in there? And hence, there are many irregularities that are happening with regard to learners' resources that they cannot actually have a voice in, because they are excluded in certain matters that the school or the chair of the governing body deem it possible for them to hear. So there are many challenges and tensions there. And when I started, I talked about thought leadership. Thought leadership teaches you critical thinking, to look at things. And I said a thought leader is someone who possesses the right kind of knowledge to challenge existing paradigms. So you don't argue by fighting, you don't argue by taking stones and fighting. You argue with arguments, supported by evidence, that the RCL is constituted, this school governing body is constituted by 28 members, and so many members have been requested to excuse themselves. Is this legitimate? Learners are not represented here. Be able to package your argument based on knowledge and based on evidence. Don't just fight like a rascal. Sometimes the governors within the SGB who are older than you become obstacle to participation, exacerbate or increase or worsen power relations based on race, gender, and socioeconomic classes. And I know particularly this type of problems is experienced in former Model C schools. And you will see that certain learners cannot make part of leadership, and certain gender. Just because you are a girl, you cannot make part of leadership, or you cannot make part of those things. So hence, the anti-discrimination must be part of everything that we do at our schools. Make sure that there is representation, and make sure that you fight legitimately for representation. If there's a forum and you see that this is a forum of RC and it has no girls, how can that be? Is it fine? Should we continue like that? So these are some of the things that we need to fight against prejudice. Internal exclusion, when we speak of internal exclusion within this context, we are talking about a situation where people are part of the forums, but when they make inputs or views, they are dismissed. Have you been in that space? You will know what I'm talking about. That you have a view, your views are dismissed, and they are dismissed as out of order, simply because the language and the style of expression privileges certain types of expressions. You see this accent that I'm speaking about? My accent, like, This type of accent, there are certain schools that might not even actually like it. Because how can I be in leadership and I'm speaking like this with a baby accent? There's a particular accent. And I'm talking about real stuff that research has found. That some young people, capable and competent as they can be, skillful as they can be, are excluded based on the accent. And they are not supported to be in leadership. And you know the type of schools that I'm talking about, where this accent becomes a problem. You can come out of the township very competent, and you come to those schools, they make you feel like you don't belong because of your accent. So, as a leader, these are the nuances of colonization that you need to be able to look out for and stand on the side of truth. That this young man can be having a deep, thick Zulu accent, but he's smart. And he can be part of our leadership. And he can do well. So let's be careful of those nuances, because we won't be 21st century leaders if we are not ready to challenge existing paradigms. We cannot fit in this century. And I want to quickly jump into some of the recommendations, and some of them I was making them as I was going as well. I think, what did I do? I was looking at the time now. This computer has no F8 here. Well, I can speak from it. I can't see. I don't know what it is, because I was trying to look for a time. So, some of the recommendation that one has, and I think the department needs to take seriously, is to rethink grade 12 participation. Let's rethink grade 12 participation in these forums. The views of grade 12s can be there, but can we really have the grade 12s having all RCL meetings and then also having SGB meetings? It's too much. It's too much. Time is too short. The pressure is high. And I'm thinking that as we try to do, no, leave it, I'll just speak. As we do this, the department needs to think participation of grade 12s in the SGBs. Perhaps maybe cap it at grade 11. Because when we do research and we speak to grade 12s, they talk about the pressure of being in these forums, the pressure that they go through, emergency meetings, sometimes meetings of SGBs finishing very late in the evening. So these are some of the issues that we might need to rethink, and the department can take seriously. The other important one becomes the other important resolution: distancing ourselves from separate identities. That's a recommendation, and I've already expanded on the findings of research around this. Because if we go into a forum, you are telling me I'm young, you are old. We are no longer having a common identity. You are separating us from the very beginning. So we need to respect each other and the positions and the status that one comes to the forum with, and be able to take each other seriously. And when I say common identity, I'm not talking about disrespect, because that's how our young people do. Our young people then think we are equal, and then I can just speak to you anyhow. We sit in meetings at work. Some people are older than me, I am a leader to them. Some are younger, but there is mutual respect. So if you can understand the issue of mutual respect for one another and see a person for who they are, we will go very far. The other recommendation, let's allow conflict and debate in the meetings. Don't stifle debate and say, keep quiet, sit down when mama, or because sometimes we must learn, even as TLOs, as principals, we must learn to allow conflict and debate within this in a respectful manner. Because conflict sometimes gives us an opportunity to diagnose deep-seated problems. So if you don't open space up for conflict, you are going to have a problem. Because there will be deep-seated problems happening at the school. And because when you are shutting people down when you see that there is conflict. Conflict, I'm not talking about war. I'm not talking about what is happening in Ukraine and Sudan. I'm talking about disagreements, the lack of consensus. Allow it. Allow dialogue. When you do that, you will be able to understand the deep-seated problems that students have. The other important thing is that after everything has happened in the forum, as TLOs, as chairs of SGBs as well, we need to ask ourselves, we have discussed this point, what were the perspective of learners? Do we do that, TLOs? Or we just go to the next item? We will have to seek, remember, the young people are young in these forums, inexperienced. They come here for a year in the SGB. But when we are there, let's try to make sure that we as TLOs, because we are liaisons, let's try to say to the chair of the meeting, say before we can go to the next item, let's hear what the perspective of young people is on this matter. If they have no perspective, it's fine. But you have deliberately and intentionally sought for it. Do you understand? So it's very, very important. Otherwise, these forums, they're just going to be tick boxes that we have them, but they are not going to make the difference that we want to see in our schools. Adults in the SGB should also assume the role of a go-between or a facilitator. Many of us, we go there with our authority. Just by virtue of my age, when I'm with you, and I think because I'm older, you need to listen, you need to give respect. And I don't facilitate a condition where you can be able to express and have a voice. Because all what learner participation is about voice, is about agency. And it is about making sure that the inputs that you put are heard, considered, and acted upon. If people have agreed on something that you requested, they must also act on it. So that is the gist of learner participation as we want. And in this way, you will find that you are leaders in many ways, in every respect. Many of the people that you see as leaders in front everywhere, they have been leaders. I was a leader at university and I had to resign from the SRC as a secretary at some point because of rowdy people. I could not stand for that. That's not my way. If this SRC is about fighting the rector and actually making sure, because you don't know, some people are being bought elsewhere to buy and to make sure that somebody leaves. And we discovered that there are people who are being used by external bodies within our own SRC to make sure that the rector leaves. And let me tell you, it's always good to stand on the side of truth, because the truth will always set you free. And I knew I was roped in the meeting where I could really see this thing for what it is, and I gave in my resignation letter. because I cannot be part of this unethical conduct of removing a legitimately elected person because of self-interest and private selfish interest. Then I'm not a leader. I might as well sit down and let those who think they are leaders go on with their rogue behavior. And it was very sad. It was a very sad moment, because as soon as I resigned, the president resigned, and the whole SLC was disbanded. And for a considerable 6 months, we were without SLC at our school. And what does that mean? We have no voice, because we have no one there. So be careful as you sit there. The type of people that you work with, the type of individuals that are with you, because as I said when I started, there is individual participation, but there is also collective participation. If the collective do not stand on principle, are unethical, their conduct is questionable, stand on the side of truth. Stand on the side of truth. You might be unpopular to the group, you might be unpopular to the student collective, but stand with the truth. The truth will always set you free. On that note, Dr. Hlabani, I wish to end here. I see my time is ticking. Thank you.